Beloved, welcome into this sacred moment. This is not just another morning, and this is not just another prayer. This is Thursday, the 12th of March, 2026, and heaven has already marked this day with intention. Before emails, before conversations, before decisions, before distractions, you have chosen to align your spirit with the agenda of God. I need you to understand something from the very beginning. Your day does not start when you open your eyes. It starts when you open your mouth in prayer. What you speak first determines what responds to you next. Prayer is not a ritual. Prayer is a command center. Prayer is where authority is activated, where alignment is restored, and where destiny is recalibrated. This morning, we are not praying out of fear. We're not praying out of desperation. We are praying from a place of divine authority. Because when you pray, you are not begging heaven. You are partnering with heaven. You are stepping into agreement with God's will, God's power, and God's purpose for this day. As we begin, I want you to posture your heart. Let distractions fall away. Let yesterday stay in yesterday. Let anxiety release its grip. Right now, we enter this prayer knowing that what tried to oppose you overnight will not control you today, and what delayed you before will not define you going forward. This prayer is designed to shift atmospheres, to unlock clarity, to release strength, and to position you correctly for everything this day carries. So wherever you are, at home, in your car, preparing for work, or stillness before the noise, I want you ready. Lift your expectations, engage your faith, open your spirit. Because when we pray this morning, things will move, doors will respond, and grace will meet you exactly where you are. Prayer is the first act of authority that governs the rest of the day. Because before the world speaks to you, before circumstances attempt to define you, before pressure demands a response, heaven must hear your voice. Authority is not accidental, it is intentional, and prayer is the intentional positioning of the believer into dominion. When you pray first, you are not reacting to life, you are setting life in order. You are declaring that this day will not be ruled by chaos, emotions, fear, delay, or confusion, but by divine alignment and heavenly purpose. Prayer is the moment where spiritual hierarchy is established, where the unseen realm receives instruction, and where your spirit takes its rightful place above the pressures of time and circumstance. The first act of the day is critical because first speaks of priority, and priority speaks of government. Whatever comes first governs what follows. If worry comes first, anxiety will rule. If distractions come first, confusion will dominate. If fear comes first, hesitation will dictate decisions. But when prayer comes first, authority takes the lead. Prayer is how you declare jurisdiction over the hours ahead, how you establish spiritual boundaries around your assignments, and how you announce to every opposing force that this day already belongs to God. The morning is not neutral ground, it is contested space, and prayer is how you secure it. Authority is released through voice, and prayer is the authorized language of the believer. When you pray, you are not whispering into the air. You are issuing decrees that shape outcomes. Heaven responds to order, and prayer brings order to time. The reason the enemy seeks to rush mornings, crowd schedules, and overwhelm thoughts is because he understands that whoever controls the beginning often controls the flow. Prayer interrupts that strategy by reclaiming the start, anchoring the mind, and stabilizing the spirit. It reminds you who you are before the world tells you who you must be. Prayer governs the day because it aligns your will with divine intention. Many people move through hours disconnected from heaven, making decisions without clarity, speaking without wisdom, reacting without discernment. Prayer corrects that drift. It calibrates the inner man. It sharpens spiritual perception. It brings the heart into agreement with God's agenda. instead of personal urgency. When you pray first, you carry discernment into conversations, wisdom into choices, patience into delays, and confidence into challenges. The authority released in prayer is not emotional, it is positional. You are seated in heavenly places, and prayer is how you operate from that seat. It is how you remind your soul that you are not beneath circumstances, you are above them. Prayer does not deny reality, it governs it. It does not ignore problems, it defines how problems are addressed. When prayer is first, stress does not get to decide the pace of your day, pressure does not get to dictate your tone, and conflict does not get to steal your peace. Prayer also establishes spiritual covering over the day. Words spoken in faith become walls of protection, gates of access, and pathways of grace. You are not walking into random encounters. You are walking into divinely ordered moments. Prayer releases angelic assignment, divine assistance, and supernatural awareness. It prepares you for things you cannot see yet, conversations you have not had yet, challenges that have not surfaced yet. This is why prayer must come before movement, because movement without covering leads to exhaustion, but movement under authority leads to effectiveness. When prayer governs the day, your responses change. You no longer respond from impulse, but from instruction. You no longer speak from frustration, but from wisdom. You no longer decide from fear, but from faith. Prayer slows the inner chaos and strengthens spiritual resolve. It anchors you so that even when the day becomes demanding, your spirit remains steady. Authority is not loudness, it is calm confidence rooted in alignment, and prayer cultivates that posture. Prayer also reminds you that you are not self-sustaining. It breaks the illusion of control and replaces it with trust. Authority does not mean independence from God. It means dependence on His power. Prayer keeps pride from governing the day and humility from being overlooked. It keeps success from becoming self-centered and failure from becoming overwhelming. Prayer brings perspective, reminding you that the day is bigger than tasks and schedules, that eternity is influencing every moment. When prayer is first, your time becomes intentional. You are no longer chasing the day, you are stewarding it. Minutes are no longer wasted, energy is no longer scattered, focus is no longer divided. Prayer brings clarity to priorities and strength to execution. It gives weight to decisions and purpose to effort. It turns ordinary routines into meaningful actions because they are carried out under divine direction. Prayer governs the day because it shapes the inner atmosphere. External peace is difficult to maintain when internal alignment is missing. Prayer brings harmony between spirit, soul, and body. It quiets anxious thoughts, restrains negative speech, and strengthens inner resolve. The day may present unexpected challenges, but prayer ensures that challenges do not dominate your emotional state or spiritual posture. Prayer is also warfare, not against people, but against unseen resistance. When you pray first, you disarm strategies designed to derail focus, weaken resolve, and drain strength. You are not fighting throughout the day because you have already taken your position in the morning. Authority exercised early reduces battles later. What is addressed in prayer does not have to be confronted in panic. When prayer governs the day, you walk with awareness that heaven is actively involved in your life. You notice divine interruptions, timely encouragements, and supernatural provision. You recognize that the day is not just happening to you, it is unfolding with purpose. Prayer opens your eyes to divine patterns, aligning you with opportunities that might otherwise be overlooked. Prayer is the declaration that God is not an afterthought, but the foundation. It is the acknowledgement that strength comes from alignment, not effort alone. It is the moment where you surrender outcomes while embracing responsibility. Prayer teaches you to act boldly while trusting deeply. When prayer comes first, your words carry weight throughout the day. What you speak later is shaped by what you spoke earlier. Your tone is governed by faith. your reactions by wisdom, your decisions by clarity. Authority established in prayer flows into every interaction, every task, every challenge. Prayer is the act of taking your rightful place before the day attempts to take it from you. It is the refusal to allow urgency to replace purpose or noise to replace instruction. It is the conscious choice to let heaven lead and earth respond. Prayer does not remove responsibility, it empowers it. It does not remove challenges, it reframes them. When prayer governs the day, your life moves with intention rather than interruption. You carry peace that is not dependent on outcomes, strength that is not dependent on circumstances, and confidence that is not dependent on approval. Prayer becomes the foundation upon which everything else rests, the unseen structure holding visible effort together. Prayer is not preparation for the day. It is the beginning of dominion over it. It is the act that sets spiritual order, establishes authority, and defines the rhythm of the hours ahead. When prayer is first, the day does not get the final word. Heaven does. Alignment with God in the morning determines victory before opposition appears. Because battles are rarely won in the moment they manifest, they are won in the unseen spaces where positioning takes place. Most opposition does not announce itself ahead of time. It arrives disguised as interruption, pressure, distraction, or emotional strain. Morning alignment is how you prepare for what you cannot yet see. When your spirit is aligned early, resistance loses its advantage because you are already standing in agreement with divine order before disorder attempts to introduce itself. Alignment is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is the conscious decision to bring your thoughts, intentions, emotions, and expectations under God's authority before the day begins to pull them in competing directions. Without alignment, even strong people become scattered, reacting to situations instead of governing them. Alignment brings coherence to the inner man. It ensures that when challenges arise, your response is consistent with faith rather than fueled by impulse. Victory is not accidental. It is the result of spiritual readiness. The reason many people feel overwhelmed by daily opposition is not because they lack faith, but because alignment was postponed. When alignment is delayed, reaction becomes necessary. But when alignment is established early, reaction is minimized. You are no longer scrambling for peace, wisdom, or strength in the middle of pressure because those resources were already secured in the presence of God. Morning alignment adjusts perspective. It reminds you that you are not entering the day alone, unsupported, or unprepared. It reframes the way you view potential problems. What once felt intimidating begins to look manageable. What once caused anxiety begins to lose emotional power. Alignment does not remove opposition, but it removes its ability to surprise and destabilize you. Opposition thrives on misalignment. Confusion, frustration, and fatigue often come from being spiritually out of position. Alignment restores order. It brings the mind into agreement with truth, the heart into agreement with purpose, and the will into agreement with God's instruction. When these elements are aligned, opposition has fewer access points. The enemy exploits gaps, but alignment closes them. His morning alignment also sharpens discernment. Not every battle is meant to be fought, and not every challenge deserves your energy. When you align early, you gain clarity about what to engage and what to ignore. Discernment is a form of victory because it prevents unnecessary conflict and wasted effort. Alignment allows you to recognize distractions masquerading as emergencies and resist urgency that is not divinely assigned. Victory before opposition appears means that your spirit is already fortified. You are not emotionally vulnerable or spiritually exposed. Alignment builds internal strength. It stabilizes your emotions so that external events do not control your inner state. When alignment is present, peace becomes a constant rather than a reaction. Confidence becomes steady rather than situational. Alignment also establishes spiritual momentum. The way you begin often determines the rhythm of the rest of the day. When you begin aligned, you move with purpose instead of haste. You speak with intention instead of frustration. You make decisions with clarity instead of confusion. Momentum, rooted in alignment, carries you forward even when resistance appears. Morning alignment is an act of submission that produces authority. When you submit your plans, expectations, and desires to God, you gain access to divine backing. Authority flows from alignment, not from self-effort. When your will agrees with God's will, heaven supports your steps. This is why aligned individuals walk with quiet confidence. They know they are not operating alone. Opposition often targets identity, attempting to shake confidence and create doubt. Alignment reinforces identity before the day begins. It reminds you who you are, whose you are, and why you are here. When identity is settled early, accusations and discouragement lose their impact. You are not easily swayed by opinions, setbacks, or delays because your foundation is secure. Alignment also prepares you emotionally. Many conflicts escalate not because of their severity, but because of emotional mismanagement. Alignment calms the inner atmosphere. It creates emotional resilience, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than react defensively. When emotions are aligned, communication improves, relationships are protected, and unnecessary tension is avoided. Victory before opposition appears means that you are proactive rather than defensive. You are not waiting for problems to arise before seeking God's help. You are establishing partnership from the beginning. This proactive posture changes how you experience the day. Instead of bracing for impact, you move with expectancy. Instead of anticipating failure, you anticipate guidance. Alignment also affects timing. Many struggles come from acting too soon or too late. Morning alignment sensitizes you to divine timing. It teaches patience where waiting is required and boldness where action is needed. Timing is critical to victory, and alignment keeps you in rhythm with God's pace rather than human pressure. When alignment is present, opposition often loses its intensity. What could have become a major issue resolves quickly. What could have escalated becomes manageable. This is not coincidence. It is the result of spiritual ardor. Alignment does not eliminate challenges, but it reduces their ability to derail progress. Alignment with God in the morning also guards your words. Speech carries power, and misaligned words can create unnecessary battles. When you align early, your language is shaped by wisdom. You speak life instead of frustration, clarity instead of confusion, faith instead of fear. Words spoken from alignment reinforce victory rather than invite resistance. Victory before opposition appears also means that your focus is protected. Distraction is a subtle form of opposition, slowly draining energy and clarity. Alignment helps you recognize what truly matters. It keeps your attention anchored on purpose rather than pulled by noise. Focus is preserved, productivity increases, and effectiveness multiplies. Alignment creates spiritual consistency. Instead of experiencing highs and lows based on circumstances, you develop steadiness. This consistency confuses opposition because it cannot predict emotional reactions or spiritual posture. When you remain steady, opposition loses leverage. Morning alignment is not about controlling outcomes. It is about trusting direction. It releases the need to force results and replaces it with confidence in divine leading. This trust brings rest, and rest is a powerful form of victory. When you are not striving, you conserve energy for what truly requires effort. Alignment also prepares you for divine opportunities. Not all unexpected moments are opposition. Some are openings. When aligned, you recognize opportunities that others overlook. You respond with readiness rather than hesitation. Alignment keeps your heart open and your spirit alert. Victory before opposition appears is the fruit of consistent alignment. It is the result of choosing presence over pressure, agreement over anxiety, and purpose over panic. Alignment does not make you immune to difficulty, but it makes you resilient, aware, and prepared. When alignment governs the morning, the day unfolds with greater ease, not because problems disappear, but because you are positioned correctly to handle them. Strength is already in place. Wisdom is already active. Peace is already established. Authority is already assumed. Alignment is the quiet preparation that produces visible victory. It is the unseen adjustment that determines how visible challenges are experienced. When you align early, you are not surprised by opposition because you are already standing in victory before it has the chance to announce itself. What you speak in prayer establishes the atmosphere you will walk in because words are not just sounds. They are declarations, decrees, and determinants of reality. The Bible tells us that life and death are in the power of the tongue, and this principle is not symbolic, it is spiritual law. The very first words you release in the morning set a tone that your spirit, soul, and body will follow throughout the day. Every conversation, decision, and interaction is influenced by what you have spoken before stepping into the world. Prayer is the act of intentionally speaking life, authority, and purpose over your circumstances, your mind, and your spirit before the day begins to impose its narrative upon you. When you pray, you are not simply offering words into the air. You are instructing the unseen realm. Heaven responds to clarity, intention, and authority. What you decree in prayer resonates in the spiritual atmosphere, forming a protective boundary around your day and shaping the way events unfold. If your words are filled with doubt, fear, or negativity, the atmosphere becomes heavy, tense, and prone to disruption. If your words are filled with faith, expectation, and alignment with God's promises, the atmosphere becomes charged with favor, peace, and divine opportunity. The power of the tongue is subtle yet decisive because it carries authority that governs more than you can immediately see. Speaking in prayer establishes order before chaos arrives. Life is full of interruptions, unforeseen circumstances, and challenges designed to test patience and faith. When you speak carefully and intentionally in prayer, you are asserting control over what is coming before it touches you. Words act as spiritual scaffolding, providing a framework upon which your day can be built. You are literally constructing the spiritual environment in which your decisions will be made, your interactions will take place, and your experiences will be interpreted. Without intentional words in prayer, the day begins in reactive mode, leaving you vulnerable to distraction, discouragement, and compromise. Your words in prayer also communicate belief. God honors faith that is vocalized. To speak in prayer is to declare that you trust God's power and purpose over your own understanding or the limitations of your circumstances. The moment you speak faith aloud, it activates spiritual mechanisms that align angels, open doors, and shift situations. Words are instruments of partnership with heaven. They are how humans cooperate with divine strategy. Prayer is not passive. It is active collaboration with God. And the first words you speak set the initial conditions for that collaboration. The atmosphere responds to expectation, and expectation is released through speech. When you establish an atmosphere through prayer, it impacts your mind and emotions as well. Words shape perception. If you begin the day declaring peace, clarity, and purpose, your mind begins to process events differently. Challenges are interpreted as opportunities for growth. Interruptions are seen as divine redirection. And delays are understood as timing rather than denial. The tongue in prayer aligns your consciousness with spiritual truth before worldly pressures can distort your thinking. This is why early morning prayer is critical. It sets the mental and spiritual parameters for your day, creating a consistent foundation from which your life can operate. Prayer also communicates authority. Every time you speak in alignment with God's word, you are exercising dominion over the day. You are declaring that you are not a passive participant in life, but an active steward of the time, resources, and relationships God has entrusted to you. Your words are decrees that command the flow of events. This authority is not in pride, but in obedience, because alignment with God magnifies the impact of your declaration. Speaking in prayer is the believer's tool for governance, establishing boundaries and expectations in the spiritual and natural realms alike. The words you release in prayer influence relationships and interactions. How you respond to others is often determined by the atmosphere created in your own heart. If your morning prayer includes gratitude, patience, and clarity, you carry a disposition that diffuses conflict and invites cooperation. If your words are filled with anxiety, anger, or despair, the atmosphere around you becomes tense and reactive, and interactions can escalate unnecessarily. Prayer sets the tone internally, which then radiates outward into every encounter, shaping outcomes before words are exchanged or decisions are made. Every spoken prayer carries consequences beyond the immediate moment. When you decree protection, favor, and provision, you are preparing a day where obstacles are minimized and blessings are maximized. When you pray for guidance and clarity, you increase the likelihood of making decisions that align with God's will. Prayer is not merely about asking for help. It is about establishing conditions that allow divine influence to operate freely. The spoken word in prayer creates receptivity for God's intervention in ways that silent thought cannot. Speaking in prayer also builds spiritual resilience. By declaring victory, peace, and strength aloud, you reinforce your own faith and fortify your spirit against discouragement. Opposition will inevitably arise, but the atmosphere you have established with your words acts as a buffer, reducing its effectiveness. When your prayer is deliberate, confident, and rooted in God's truth, it equips you to navigate challenges without succumbing to fear or confusion. Words in prayer are like markers of territory, signaling that you are already under divine protection and favor. The power of words in prayer is amplified by consistency. Daily, intentional declarations create an ongoing atmosphere of alignment and expectation. A single morning prayer sets the tone for the day, but repeated, consistent prayers cultivate an enduring spiritual environment around your life. This ongoing declaration strengthens faith, establishes patterns of obedience, and positions you to recognize and receive opportunities. The spoken word is an instrument of both immediate and long-term spiritual influence, shaping the present while preparing for the future. The atmosphere established in prayer is also relational with heaven. Speaking intentionally invites God into partnership for your day. Words of praise, gratitude, and request draw attention from the throne room and engage divine resources. The spiritual realm responds to declaration and authority. Prayer is not simply asking for things to happen. It is activating heaven's presence and influence in alignment with your faith. The words you speak function as instructions, signals, and agreements with God's will, setting the stage for intervention, guidance, and breakthrough. Your speech in prayer influences more than just external circumstances. It also governs internal states. By speaking hope, peace, and courage, you condition your emotions to align with faith rather than fear. Anxiety and doubt lose their grip because the words spoken in prayer create a contrasting spiritual reality. The act of speaking aloud enforces focus, reinforces belief, and engages the mind in partnership with the spirit. This intentional verbal engagement strengthens your capacity to navigate the day effectively. Prayer also functions as preparation for decision making. When the atmosphere is set through words of clarity and wisdom, your judgment is sharpened. Challenges are approached with discernment rather than impulsiveness. Your ability to perceive opportunities and avoid pitfalls is enhanced. The words you speak create a mental and spiritual climate in which choices are informed by divine guidance rather than by mere reaction. When you speak life in prayer, the natural world begins to align with the spiritual reality you have declared. Favor, provision, protection, and clarity flow more freely because your words have established expectation. Your declarations serve as a blueprint for divine action. Opposition is anticipated and mitigated because you have already addressed it through speech. The spoken word bridges the unseen and the seen, making prayer a primary mechanism for influencing outcomes before they manifest. The atmosphere created in prayer also shapes character. When you consistently speak declarations of faith, gratitude, and perseverance, you cultivate spiritual maturity. You train your spirit to respond appropriately under pressure and to remain steadfast in uncertainty. Words in prayer mold habits of thought, reaction, and behavior that reinforce alignment with divine purpose. The consistent establishment of the atmosphere strengthens not just your circumstances, but your capacity to walk victoriously through them. Speaking in prayer creates a cycle of influence. Your words affect the unseen realm, which in turn influences circumstances, which then reinforce faith, prompting further declarations. This cycle builds momentum that carries you through the day. The initial words spoken are critical because they set the first link in this chain, establishing conditions for continuous alignment, divine engagement, and spiritual authority. Spiritual clarity comes before physical movement and decision making because the unseen realm always precedes the seen. And without understanding what is happening in the spiritual, the natural can become chaotic, confusing, and misdirected. Every choice we make, every step we take, every word we speak is influenced by our inner perception of reality. When clarity is absent, actions are reactive, often driven by emotion, assumption, or fear. But when the spirit is clear, when the mind is settled in truth, every movement becomes purposeful, directed, and in alignment with divine intention. Spiritual clarity is not a luxury or an optional practice. It is a foundational requirement for victory, effectiveness, and peace in every aspect of life. Clarity is established through prayer, meditation, and deliberate engagement with God's word because the spiritual realm communicates guidance, instruction, and insight before situations manifest in the natural. If you act without spiritual insight, you risk misalignment with destiny and divine purpose. Decisions made without clarity often require correction, lead to frustration, or open doors to unnecessary opposition. But when clarity is prioritized, the steps you take are strategic, the words you speak are intentional, and the actions you perform are consistent with heavenly order. The first priority in every day, in every circumstance, is clarity of vision, clarity of purpose, and clarity of spirit. Spiritual clarity protects against deception and confusion. The enemy thrives on obscurity, creating circumstances that distort perception, cloud judgment, and provoke anxiety. Without discernment, we are prone to respond incorrectly, make poor choices, and allow circumstances to control our emotions. But clarity illuminates the path, exposing hidden motives, revealing the correct timing, and distinguishing between opportunity and distraction. When the mind and spirit are aligned, clarity functions as a shield, guarding against the misdirection that often accompanies uncertainty. The first act of seeking clarity positions you to navigate the day with intelligence, awareness, and confidence. Clarity also enhances focus. The human mind is easily divided by external pressures, internal doubts, and competing demands. Spiritual clarity simplifies complexity. It allows the heart and mind to identify priority, establish order, and allocate energy appropriately. When you know what God has established for your day, your steps are deliberate rather than reactive. The ability to concentrate on what matters most is a product of spiritual alignment, which clarifies intention, stabilizes thought, and guides action. Focus without clarity can lead to wasted effort, misapplied energy, and unresolved challenges. But focus, grounded in clarity, ensures effectiveness and success. The foundation of clarity is truth. Spiritual clarity comes from understanding God's principles, promises, and timing. Without truth, decisions are based on assumption, opinion, or fear. With truth, every choice is informed by certainty and divine perspective. Spiritual clarity is the lens through which life is interpreted accurately, revealing purpose even in moments of difficulty. It distinguishes what is essential from what is trivial, what is timely from what is premature, and what is eternal from what is temporary. Clarity ensures that actions align with purpose rather than impulse, intention rather than reaction. Clarity before action safeguards resources, time, energy, and relationships. Acting without insight often produces results that must be corrected or undone. Costing more effort than necessary, spiritual clarity maximizes efficiency because it ensures that decisions are based on accurate perception rather than assumption. Steps taken under the guidance of clarity require less correction, produce greater fruit, and foster sustainable progress. The energy expended aligns with results, and every movement carries intentional impact. Clarity turns labor into investment rather than loss, and action into strategic accomplishment rather than aimless activity. When spiritual clarity precedes movement, peace accompanies action. Anxiety, stress, and confusion often stem from acting without understanding. When clarity is established, the spirit is anchored, the mind is focused, and the heart is settled. Even when challenges arise, the individual moves with calm confidence, grounded in the awareness of divine direction. Peace does not come from the absence of difficulty, but from knowing the truth about the situation and understanding how to respond. Clarity transforms fear into confidence, uncertainty into certainty, and hesitation into decisive movement. Clarity also protects decision-making from manipulation. Life is full of influences, voices, opinions, and pressures that seek to sway judgment. Without spiritual insight, these influences can dominate thinking, resulting in choices that reflect external pressure rather than divine direction. Spiritual clarity filters information through the lens of truth, discernment, and divine wisdom. It strengthens resolve and enables one to act independently of distracting influences. Clarity ensures that actions are governed by principle rather than persuasion, by faith rather than fear, and by destiny rather than circumstance. Clarity is required before communication because words have power and reveal inner alignment. Speaking without clarity risks misunderstanding, conflict, and ineffective influence. When the spirit and mind are clear, communication is purposeful, authoritative, and precise. Clarity ensures that what is spoken aligns with truth, intention, and desired outcome. Words become instruments of influence, not confusion. Prayer and spiritual reflection before speaking establish the atmosphere, clarify intent, and ensure that communication produces results consistent with divine will rather than human emotion. Spiritual clarity is also critical for navigating opportunities. Many opportunities appear attractive but are not aligned with purpose or timing. Without discernment, one may invest time, resources, and energy into situations that are ultimately unfruitful or even detrimental. Clarity enables recognition of alignment, signaling which opportunities are divine, which require caution, and which should be declined. Acting without clarity risks loss and frustration, whereas acting with insight ensures that decisions advance purpose and position one for growth. Understanding the spiritual dimension of situations provides perspective and wisdom, transforming choice into strategic advantage. Clarity strengthens resilience in the face of adversity. Challenges are inevitable, but when the spirit is clear, difficulties are interpreted correctly, not as defeat, but as opportunity, refinement, or redirection. Understanding the spiritual dynamics at work allows for proactive responses instead of reactive struggle. Clarity protects emotional stability, preserves energy, and prevents discouragement from dictating behavior. When decisions are made with insight, the pressure of opposition cannot derail purpose because the individual is anchored in understanding, perspective, and alignment. Clarity is cultivated through consistent spiritual discipline. Time spent in prayer, meditation, study of God's word, and reflection produces insight that informs daily action. Spiritual clarity is not accidental. It is a result of intentional engagement with divine truth. It is developed through practice, patience, and obedience. By establishing routines that prioritize insight before action, one ensures that clarity governs every decision, interaction, and movement. Consistency strengthens perception, sharpens judgment, and deepens understanding, making clarity a stable foundation rather than a fleeting moment. Spiritual clarity aligns priorities with purpose. It enables one to identify what truly matters and invest attention, energy, and resources accordingly. Decisions are made with awareness of long-term impact, not merely immediate convenience or emotional reaction. Clarity allows for strategic planning, effective problem solving, and purposeful engagement with daily tasks. Life becomes more coherent, predictable, and productive because choices are governed by understanding rather than chance or impulse. Clarity also influences attitude and perspective. When understanding precedes action, frustration, anger, and despair are less likely to dominate reactions. Challenges are interpreted with wisdom, setbacks with insight, and uncertainty with confidence. Clarity transforms mindset, creating an atmosphere of hope, faith, and purpose. It enables one to remain anchored in truth even when circumstances appear contrary. The clarity established in the spirit translates into stability in thought, emotion, and action. When spiritual clarity guides physical movement, efficiency increases, mistakes decrease, and outcomes improve. Actions are deliberate rather than accidental, strategic rather than random, and intentional rather than reactive. The foundation of clarity ensures that every step is taken with understanding, foresight, and alignment with divine intention. The results are greater impact, reduced waste, and measurable progress in accordance with purpose. Clarity provides the internal navigation system that directs life towards success, peace, and fulfillment, even in the midst of complexity and uncertainty. This day carries divine assignments that respond to intentional prayer, because every moment is not neutral, every encounter is not coincidental, and every opportunity is not random. There is a spiritual architecture to time, and God has already positioned events, relationships, and experiences for those who are intentionally aligned with His purpose. Prayer is the key that unlocks these assignments. Without intentional prayer, many divine opportunities pass unnoticed or unclaimed because the spiritual channels remain unactivated. Prayer is the act that tunes the heart to recognize God's voice, the circumstances He has prepared, and the specific instructions for action that will bring fruitfulness and favor. Divine assignments are often hidden in the ordinary moments. What seems like a routine task, a simple conversation, or a minor decision may carry eternal significance when approached with spiritual awareness. The purpose of intentional prayer is to heighten perception, opening the mind, heart, and spirit to recognize these hidden assignments. When you pray with focus and expectation, your spiritual senses are sharpened, allowing you to see the potential in what others might overlook. Prayer transforms ordinary time into purposeful engagement and ordinary people into vessels for extraordinary impact. Intentional prayer aligns your will with divine instruction. Many times, opportunities go unclaimed because the heart is unprepared to receive direction. God's assignments are not imposed upon you, they are designed to be cooperative. When you engage in prayer, you open the channels for guidance, revelation, and empowerment. This alignment ensures that the actions you take correspond with divine strategy, maximizing impact and minimizing missteps. Prayer positions you in readiness to execute assignments effectively, not haphazardly, but with wisdom, timing, and purpose. Prayer also activates favor. Divine assignments are often accompanied by doors, resources, and relationships that are invisible until prayer engages them. Favor responds to spiritual initiative, and intentional prayer is the expression of that initiative. Through prayer, angels are dispatched, circumstances are arranged, and influential connections are aligned in ways that are often imperceptible but decisive. The assignments of the day respond to those who actively engage spiritually, because prayer invites heaven to co-labor with intention rather than assumption. Divine assignments require clarity and discernment, which are cultivated through prayer. Without insight, opportunities may be misinterpreted, avoided, or wasted. Prayer provides understanding of the nature, timing, and method of execution for every assignment. It reveals the priorities, the necessary resources, and the proper approach. In this way, prayer functions as a spiritual roadmap, guiding the believer to act not only effectively, but also with precision. Intentional prayer ensures that divine assignments are not missed, mismanaged, or misunderstood, but fulfilled according to God's will. Assignments often involve influence over people, situations, or events. Prayer sensitizes the heart to the needs, motives, and opportunities for impact that might otherwise be invisible. Through prayer, the believer gains awareness of whom to encourage, what to speak, when to intervene, and how to act in ways that align with God's intended outcomes. This spiritual sensitivity transforms ordinary interactions into strategic actions that fulfill divine purpose. Intentional prayer cultivates awareness of these dynamics, ensuring that influence is exercised wisely, compassionately, and effectively. Every divine assignment carries potential opposition. The enemy seeks to obscure, delay, or destroy what God has positioned. Intentional prayer acts as a preemptive strike, disarming resistance before it manifests in the natural realm. Prayer establishes protection over assignments, securing spiritual territory, reinforcing authority, and shielding plans from disruption. When prayer is consistent and deliberate, the power of opposition is diminished and the path to fulfillment is strengthened. Assignments respond favorably to those who have prepared the spiritual atmosphere through faithful communication with God. Prayer also generates spiritual authority necessary for assignment execution. Divine assignments often require more than human effort. They require empowerment that comes from alignment with God. Intentional prayer releases that authority, granting wisdom, courage, and strategy to act. It positions the believer in partnership with God's power, enabling the fulfillment of tasks beyond natural capacity. Without this spiritual activation, assignments may be approached with diligence, but lack supernatural effectiveness. Prayer bridges the gap between human endeavor and divine empowerment, making fulfillment possible. The timing of divine assignments is also influenced by prayer. While opportunities may appear spontaneously, intentional engagement through prayer ensures readiness to respond appropriately. Prayer cultivates patience where waiting is required and boldness where immediate action is necessary. This ensures that assignments are executed according to divine timing rather than impulsive or misaligned action. Timing is often the difference between success and setback. And prayer synchronizes human action with God's perfect schedule. The responsiveness of assignments is heightened when the believer has established spiritual awareness and readiness through prayer. Assignments are not only about personal gain or advancement. They are designed to align with God's purposes for others. Prayer cultivates understanding of how your actions impact the broader spiritual and social ecosystem. Through prayer, you receive insight into the needs of those around you, the influence required, and the manner in which divine objectives are fulfilled. Intentional prayer ensures that assignments are executed in ways that honor God, bless others, and fulfill purpose rather than selfish interest. It aligns the execution of assignments with eternal priorities, not merely immediate outcomes. Prayer also fosters perseverance and endurance in fulfilling assignments. Some tasks are straightforward, but others require sustained effort, faith, and resilience. By engaging in daily intentional prayer, the believer fortifies the spirit, maintaining motivation, clarity, and alignment through challenges. Prayer replenishes strength, reaffirms purpose, and provides renewed guidance when obstacles appear. Assignments respond favorably to consistent engagement with God because prayer nurtures persistence and equips the believer to navigate complexities with wisdom and grace. Spiritual sensitivity is heightened through prayer, allowing discernment of which opportunities are divine assignments and which are distractions. Not every situation that appears promising is aligned with God's plan. Intentional prayer cultivates awareness, discernment, and prioritization. It ensures that energy, attention, and resources are invested in what is significant rather than peripheral. And prayer creates a filter that distinguishes divine strategy from worldly impulse, enabling focused, strategic action that fulfills purpose efficiently and effectively. The fulfillment of divine assignments often requires decision-making under uncertainty. Prayer provides confidence and insight in these moments, offering guidance that is rooted in spiritual awareness rather than guesswork. Decisions made with intentional prayer are informed by wisdom, aligned with divine purpose, and executed with authority. This spiritual preparation ensures that each action taken contributes to the overall objectives of the day, ministry, career, or personal growth. Assignments respond favorably when approached with clarity, faith, and obedience, activated through prayer. Prayer also cultivates gratitude and acknowledgement of God's role in every assignment, recognizing that divine partnership is the source of all opportunity, fosters humility, dependence, and responsiveness. Assignments are most effectively executed when the believer acknowledges that success is not solely human effort, but a combination of faith, alignment, and divine favor. Intentional prayer reinforces this perspective, keeping the heart focused on God while navigating the responsibilities, challenges, and opportunities presented by each day. Prayer ensures that divine assignments are fulfilled with intentionality, gratitude, and awareness of their spiritual significance. Assignments are interconnected, often forming part of a larger divine strategy for your life, community, or sphere of influence. Prayer helps to identify these connections, revealing patterns and priorities that guide the execution of tasks. Intentional prayer illuminates how individual responsibilities contribute to overarching purposes, enabling the believer to act strategically rather than haphazardly. Divine assignments are more than isolated tasks. They are components of a larger plan, and prayer ensures that engagement aligns with the broader vision, producing cumulative impact. Through prayer, the believer also receives empowerment for innovation and creativity in fulfilling assignments. God's guidance often involves solutions and approaches beyond human reasoning. Intentional prayer opens the mind and spirit to revelation, insight, and unconventional strategies that enhance effectiveness. Assignments respond favorably when approached with divine insight, because solutions and breakthroughs often originate in the spiritual rather than the natural. Prayer connects the believer to divine creativity, expanding capacity for problem solving, leadership, and impact. Intentional prayer reinforces accountability and responsibility in the execution of assignments. By seeking guidance, insight, and direction, the believer acknowledges the weight and significance of each task. Prayer fosters discipline, focus, and commitment, ensuring that assignments are not treated casually or ignored. The spiritual preparation provided through prayer equips the individual to follow through with diligence, patience, and integrity, maximizing the potential for outcomes aligned with divine expectation. Assignments respond when the believer approaches them with intentionality, readiness, and reverence, recognizing their spiritual significance. Morning prayer positions you to rule over circumstances, not react to them, because the earliest moments of the day set the tone for every interaction, decision, and challenge that will follow. Prayer is not merely a ritual or a routine. It is an act of authority, a declaration that you will govern the day rather than allow events, emotions, or opposition to dictate your experience. When you pray first, you claim dominion over time, circumstances, and situations, establishing control in the spiritual realm before the natural circumstances attempt to control you. This principle transforms the way you approach challenges, conversations, and responsibilities, giving you a proactive stance rather than a reactive posture. Ruling over circumstances begins with mindset. Morning prayer shapes thought patterns, aligning your mind with divine purpose and perspective. Without prayer, the mind is often influenced by worry, doubt, and distraction, reacting impulsively to pressures as they arise. But prayer refocuses the mind on God's promises, authority, and provision. It prepares the believer to face the unexpected with confidence, clarity, and calm, ensuring that decisions are grounded in spiritual wisdom rather than reactive emotion. Authority exercised in prayer changes the inner narrative, enabling a controlled, intentional approach to whatever challenges emerge throughout the day. Prayer functions as the foundation for decision making. When you approach situations with a spirit that has already connected with divine insight, your choices are informed by perspective that transcends natural understanding. Reactivity is diminished because prayer has already established priorities, discernment, and clarity. You do not act hastily or out of fear because the alignment in prayer has prepared you for strategic engagement. The ability to rule over circumstances is rooted in preparation. The spiritual positioning that occurs during prayer equips you with foresight, enabling you to anticipate challenges and respond effectively. Authority over circumstances also includes the regulation of emotions. Emotions are powerful forces that can dictate behavior and reaction if unchecked. Morning prayer stabilizes the inner atmosphere, calming anxiety, frustration, and fear before they influence actions. By setting your spirit in order first, you ensure that your responses to external pressures are measured, intentional, and effective. Prayer positions you to respond from a place of strength and discernment rather than reacting impulsively under emotional pressure. This emotional authority transforms experiences, reducing conflict, misunderstanding, and unnecessary stress throughout the day. Ruling over circumstances involves establishing boundaries. Prayer allows you to decree protection, clarity, and order over your day, your environment, and your interactions. This proactive declaration creates spiritual and mental space, ensuring that negativity, distraction, and opposition are contained rather than allowed to dominate. By speaking life, purpose, and authority at the start of the day, you are setting limits that shape outcomes and interact. Prayer positions you to influence your environment rather than simply respond to it, giving you the confidence to navigate challenges without being overpowered or misdirected by them. Prayer also amplifies spiritual awareness, which is critical for governing circumstances effectively. When the spirit is tuned through prayer, subtle influences, opportunities, and threats become more visible. You recognize strategic moments that might otherwise pass unnoticed and can engage situations with understanding rather than assumption. This awareness allows for timely intervention, wise decision-making, and proactive engagement, preventing challenges from escalating unnecessarily. Morning prayer creates a heightened sensitivity to the unseen dynamics that govern daily life, giving the believer a position of strength and authority. Authority exercised through prayer affects interactions with others. Conversations, negotiations, and relational dynamics are influenced by the inner state of the individual. When prayer establishes confidence, clarity, and purpose, your presence in interactions communicates stability, leadership, and control. You are able to influence outcomes positively rather than being swayed by conflict, criticism, or misunderstanding. Morning prayer positions the believer to act as a stabilizing force, shaping relationships and situations through wisdom, composure, and strategic engagement rather than reactionary responses. Ruling over circumstances also entails exercising influence over opportunities. Prayer aligns the believer with divine timing and guidance, allowing recognition of moments designed for growth, advancement, or intervention. Without spiritual positioning, opportunities may be overlooked, misunderstood, or mismanaged. Prayer tunes perception, ensuring that when opportunity arises, the response is informed, confident, and aligned with purpose. By governing awareness and readiness through prayer, the believer acts with intentionality, positioning themselves to capitalize on divine assignments rather than responding passively or reactively. The authority established in morning prayer governs not only external events, but also internal conditions. Habits, thoughts, and focus are shaped by the declarations made in prayer. By speaking guidance, protection, and intention over the day, the believer establishes patterns of thought and behavior that support proactive engagement rather than passive reaction. Mental clarity, emotional stability, and spiritual alertness are reinforced through intentional prayer, equipping the individual to navigate the day with composure, insight, and effectiveness. This internal authority translates into visible outcomes, influencing circumstances through deliberate, informed action. Prayer positions the believer to manage conflict effectively. Opposition is inevitable, but when the spirit is grounded in authority, challenges are addressed strategically rather than impulsively. Morning prayer ensures that the response to conflict is measured, proactive, and guided by discernment. Authority over circumstances does not eliminate difficulty, but it enables control over the approach, attitude, and outcome. By establishing spiritual dominance, first through prayer, the believer reduces vulnerability to frustration, reactive behavior, and unnecessary escalation. Consistency in morning prayer compounds authority. Daily engagement strengthens spiritual positioning, creating a habitual posture of readiness and alignment. When prayer consistently precedes activity, the ability to rule over circumstances becomes a natural pattern rather than a reactive adjustment. The believer develops a rhythm of authority, expectation, and insight, positioning themselves to navigate each day with proactive clarity. Repetition reinforces confidence, awareness, and responsiveness, ensuring that each day begins with spiritual dominance rather than reactive submission to events. Authority through prayer also shapes perception of challenges. What might initially appear overwhelming becomes manageable when the spirit is aligned. Prayer reframes obstacles, illuminating opportunities within difficulty and enabling strategic engagement. This perspective reduces fear, doubt, and indecision, ensuring that challenges do not dictate action, but rather become elements over which the believer exerts influence. Morning prayer positions the mind to see beyond immediate difficulty, aligning thought and action with purpose, insight, and divine provision. Ruling over circumstances requires confidence in divine partnership. Prayer activates awareness of God's presence, guidance, and empowerment. The believer understands that authority is exercised in cooperation with divine influence, not through self-reliance alone. This realization instills boldness, discernment, and persistence, enabling action that is both courageous and strategically informed. Prayer positions the individual to operate under divine guidance, ensuring that responses are effective, purposeful, and authoritative, even in complex or challenging situations. The exercise of authority through morning prayer also impacts productivity. Tasks, responsibilities, and engagements are approached with intention, insight, and clarity rather than reactionary urgency. Decisions are deliberate, actions are focused, and energy is directed toward meaningful outcomes. By governing the inner state through prayer first, the believer ensures that effort is not dissipated through confusion, distraction, or reaction. Productivity is amplified because the foundation of authority ensures that every movement is intentional, deliberate, and aligned with purpose. Prayer shapes resilience in the face of unexpected events. Life is unpredictable and challenges can arise at any moment. Morning prayer equips the spirit with confidence, clarity, and spiritual awareness, ensuring that setbacks do not destabilize the individual. Authority over circumstances allows for adaptive, proactive, and strategic responses rather than panic or confusion. The believer is positioned to navigate interruptions with poise, insight, and determination, maintaining control over decisions, actions, and attitudes despite changing circumstances. Prayer also strengthens the ability to influence outcomes. Authority over circumstances is not passive. It involves active engagement, strategic decisions, and deliberate action. Morning prayer ensures that these actions are informed by divine insight, aligning natural effort with spiritual guidance. The result is a proactive stance in which the believer can shape events rather than being shaped by them. Prayer positions the individual to anticipate challenges, leverage opportunities, and guide interactions toward desired outcomes with wisdom and effectiveness. Ruling over circumstances through prayer reinforces long-term stability. The consistent practice of spiritual alignment prepares the believer to handle recurring challenges, evolving responsibilities, and complex situations with confidence and authority. Patterns of reaction are replaced by patterns of proactive engagement, insight, and strategic oversight. Morning prayer establishes these patterns, ensuring that influence, control, and effectiveness are sustained throughout the day and across time. By positioning oneself in prayer, the believer gains clarity about priorities. Time, attention, and resources are allocated according to purpose rather than circumstance. Decisions are guided by insight rather than impulse, ensuring that the day is navigated with intention. This prioritization reduces wasted effort, unnecessary conflict, and misdirected energy, allowing focus on what matters most. Authority over circumstances is exercised not only through direct action, but also through the intentional stewardship of resources, time, and attention. Prayer also establishes peace, which is foundational for ruling rather than reacting. A mind, heart, and spirit anchored in divine communication do not respond impulsively to pressure, criticism, or stress. Peace becomes the lens through which decisions are made, interactions are conducted, and challenges are addressed. Morning prayer positions the believer to act with calm, clarity, and confidence, ensuring that the day is navigated with authority rather than chaos, purpose rather than confusion, and direction rather than distraction.